The wound is the place where the light enters you. My friends, let that sink in for a second. The wound. Not the comfort, not the easy parts of life. The wound. That sharp, burning place you thought was going to destroy you. That's where your strength is born. And here's the truth nobody wants to admit. The silence you gave them after the storm, after all the begging, the explaining, the forgiving, that silence is the light. That silence is where their regret begins. And trust me, folks, regret burns hotter than any anger you could have thrown their way. But before we dive in, take a second and hit that like button, subscribe, and stay with me until the end. Because what we're about to talk about isn't just another story about heartbreak. It's about rebirth. It's about power. It's about you reclaiming what they thought they could keep forever. Now, hey folks, imagine this. Imagine you're a lighthouse standing tall on a cliff. The waves are crashing, storms are raging, and ships keep coming toward your light. Some are grateful they dock safely, but some, they don't care about the light. They just drain your energy, take your shine, and then sail away without so much as a thank you. And there you are, thinking you're failing, thinking maybe your light isn't strong enough. But here's the lie you've been sold, that being steady, patient, and kind makes you weak. No, my friends, that light in you, that calm silence, that's your strength. The ships that left, they'll be lost in the dark seas, haunted by the memory of the one light that actually guided them. Marcus Aurelius once said, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." You see, they expected noise. They expected you to chase, to prove, to fight for scraps of love. But you gave them silence. And silence, folks, is not emptiness. Silence is a mirror, and in that mirror they're forced to face themselves without your kindness to cover their flaws. That's what breaks them. Not your anger, not your revenge, but your refusal to play the game anymore. Let's break the lie right here. They told you that if you stop giving, you'll lose them. They told you that if you go silent, you'll look cold, heartless, replaceable. But the truth, your silence isn't rejection, it's revelation. It shows them who they are without you. And spoiler alert, they don't like that reflection one bit. My friends, here's where it gets fun. Because regret doesn't show up like fireworks. It shows up in the quietest moments. While they're scrolling through their phone late at night, laughing at meaningless conversations, but suddenly feeling empty. It shows up when they see your name pop up somewhere and their stomach tightens. It shows up when they realize they can find bodies, but they can't find souls like yours. That's regret. And regret doesn't fade quickly. It lingers like smoke after fire. You know what silence really is. It's your victory lap in disguise. You're not running after anyone. You're not shouting for attention. You're just walking in peace while they burn in the fire they lit themselves. Seneca once said, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more, that is poor." And that's what they are now, poor in spirit, starving for the connection they once had, but destroyed. So don't let anyone tell you your silence is weakness. It's your crown, it's your fortress, it's your weapon. And when they regret losing you, it's not because you begged them to come back. It's because you taught them, without saying a word, that peace cannot be played with. Stay with me, because this is just the beginning. We're about to go deeper into why your silence has become their fire, why your absence is now their storm, and why you will rise while they burn in regret. And before we move forward, let me leave you with this short truth. I choose peace. Type those words in the comments right now. Write it for yourself. Show it to the world. Let it echo in your heart. And if you're ready to claim that peacefully, press the like button, subscribe, and stay with me, because what's coming next will set your soul on fire in the best way. Number 1, they expected your reaction, but met your silence. My friends, if you've ever been tangled in the grip of a manipulator, you know how true that is. They lived off your reaction. They thrived on it. Your anger gave them fuel. Your explanations gave them control. Your begging gave them power. They built their entire sense of superiority on the stage of your responses. But then one day, you did the unthinkable. You went quiet. And that, more than any storm of words, shook them to their core. Picture this. Imagine a magician on stage. He pulls out his hat, waves his wand, smiles at the crowd, and reaches inside to pull out the trick. But this time, nothing comes out. No rabbit, no applause. The silence in the room swallows him whole. That's what you became to them. The show stopped. The audience walked away. And now they're left on stage, sweating under the lights, realizing their tricks only worked because you kept clapping. And isn't that what so many of you have felt? The questions that gnaw at you in the quiet hours. What if they think I'm weak because I didn't fight back? What if my silence makes it seem like I don't care? What if they replace me and I'm forgotten? These are the fears silence drags out of us. Because silence feels unnatural at first. Our instincts scream to defend ourselves, to explain, to prove that we were the loyal ones, the honest ones, the ones who gave everything. And yet, the paradox is this: silence proves it louder than words ever could. Marcus Aurelius once said, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." And isn't that exactly what happened here? They expected you to match their chaos with chaos, their disrespect with desperate explanations, their betrayal with a meltdown. But you broke the script. You didn't match their fire. You became water. You didn't play their game. You put the board away. And when the noise stopped, when the endless cycle of reaction ended, they were left with something they never anticipated: themselves. That's the mirror silence holds up, my friends. It shows people who they really are when there's no one left to distract them, no one left to carry the blame, no one left to cover their wounds with your patience. And that mirror doesn't lie. That's why they hate it. They can run from your words, they can twist your explanations, they can gaslight your memory, but they cannot escape the silence that forces them to sit with their own reflection. Let's break the lie right here. They'll tell you silence means you've given up, that you've lost, that you've been defeated. But the truth is far sharper. Silence means you're done feeding the beast. You're done giving them the oxygen they need to keep the fire of manipulation alive. They may pretend your quiet doesn't matter, that they're unbothered, unaffected. But late at night, when the world is still, it's not your words echoing in their mind. It's your absence. And here's where fear plays its tricks on you. You worry that your silence makes you invisible. You wonder if they even notice you're gone. You wonder if your withdrawal has any effect at all. But here's the truth, folks. Absence has more weight than presence ever could when someone has grown addicted to your giving. You don't notice the air until it's missing. You don't miss the warmth until the cold sets in. That's what your silence became for them. The chill that seeps into their bones, reminding them of the fire they once sat beside. Seneca wrote, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." And isn't that what's happening here? You imagine them moving on happily, laughing without care, never thinking of you. But reality is different. Reality is that silence haunts. It grows louder with time, louder with every substitute that doesn't measure up, louder with every empty conversation that fails to carry the depth you once brought effortlessly. But let's be real, choosing silence is not easy. It feels like walking away from a battle without swinging a sword. It feels like surrender. And that's why so many stay trapped. They think noise equals strength. But strength isn't in the shouting, it's in the restraint. It's in choosing peace when war would be easier. It's in walking away, not because you can't fight, but because you finally realized the fight was designed to drain you, not to heal you. Think about it. A lion doesn't argue with hyenas. It doesn't bark back at dogs. It keeps walking, steady, regal, untouched. Your silence is that lion's walk. It is the unspoken reminder that you don't need to lower yourself to chaos to prove your worth. They expected fire and fury. What they got instead was calm. And calm terrifies people who only know how to thrive in storms. So let me tell you this. Your silence is not weakness. It is wisdom. It is discipline. It is the shield that no insult can pierce. And it is the one act they can never twist into their favor. You see, they can call you needy if you argue, dramatic if you explain, bitter if you lash out. But silence? Silence leaves them with nothing to twist. It leaves them exposed, alone with the truth they can't manipulate. That's why it shakes them more than anything else. So if you're sitting here wondering if your silence mattered, let me answer you. Yes, it did. More than you know. You stopped giving them the one thing they needed most, your energy. You stopped fueling their illusion, and whether they admit it or not, they felt that shift like a rug pulled from beneath their feet. My friends, write this in the comments right now. I choose silence. Say it for yourself, not for them. Because your silence is not emptiness. It is your crown. It is your power. It is your victory. Show the world that you've chosen clarity over chaos, peace over provocation. And stay with me, because what comes next will open your eyes even wider. We've just uncovered why silence shakes them, but now we're going to uncover why silence doesn't just shake them. It burns them. It becomes the fire of regret they can't put out. That's where we're going next. Number 2. Silence is the mirror. They can't escape. The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. Marcus Aurelius wrote this centuries ago, and yet, my friends, it still slices through time with sharpness. Why? Because when the noise ends and the silence settles, the only thing left to hear is the sound of your own thoughts. And that, right there, is why silence shakes them more than your words ever could. Imagine this. A room full of mirrors. Everywhere they look, every angle they turn, there's a reflection staring back. Now, when you were in their life, you were like the curtain over those mirrors. Your kindness, your forgiveness, your constant giving covered up their flaws. They didn't have to face themselves because you kept shielding them with your patience. But the moment you went quiet, the curtains fell, and now every mirror screams the truth. They see who they are. They see what they did. They see the person they became while you kept pouring light into them. And my friends, that truth, it's not pretty. It's not flattering. It burns. That's the thing about silence. It doesn't give them a script to fight against. If you argue, they can dismiss it. If you cry, they can call you dramatic. If you explain, they can twist your words. But silence? Silence doesn't give them ammo. Silence leaves them with nothing but themselves. And that's the one enemy they've been running from their whole life. Now, some of you might be asking in your heart, but do they really think about me in that silence? Don't they just move on? Here's the lie you've been fed, that people who mistreat you walk away untouched, unaffected, unbothered. No, they don't. Maybe at first they put on the show, the laugh on social media, the new partner they flaunt, the pictures where they look so happy. But understand this, that's not peace, that's performance. And performances always end, the curtain always drops. And when it does, silence is waiting for them backstage with its merciless reflection. Let's talk about fear. Their greatest fear is not losing you. Their greatest fear is facing themselves without you, because you were their cover story. You were the proof they used to tell themselves, I can't be that bad if someone this good still loves me. You were their bandage, their excuse, their distraction from healing. And once you stopped speaking, once you stopped defending and fixing and explaining, suddenly they had to sit with the wounds they never wanted to touch. And silence, folks, doesn't let you run. It pins you down and whispers, "Look, this is who you are." Epictetus said, "If someone succeeds in provoking you, realize that your mind is complicit in the provocation. Your silence is the refusal to be complicit anymore, and that's exactly why it unnerves them so much. Because for the first time, their actions are echoing back without interference. No argument, no noise, just raw consequence. Think of it like this. Imagine a thief who breaks into houses, always certain they'll get away because no one calls the police. They keep stealing, keep smiling, keep escaping. But one night, they break in and find the house empty. Nothing to take, no one to manipulate, just silence. That's scarier to them than the cops showing up, because silence means the game is over. Silence means they've been caught, not by you, but by themselves. Now I know what you're thinking. If silence is so powerful, why does it feel so heavy for me? Why do I feel like I'm the one suffering while they carry on? Here's why. Silence is discipline, and discipline always feels heavy in the beginning. It's easier to speak. It's easier to argue. It's easier to send the text that says, "Do you even care?" But silence is choosing strength over impulse. Silence is choosing to let the storm pass instead of running into it. And yes, at first it feels like you're carrying all the weight, but over time, silence becomes light, because every day you don't break it, you reclaim more of yourself. Meanwhile, for them, every day you don't break it, the mirror gets clearer. And what they see in it, my friends, is not light. It's their own darkness staring back. Let's break the lies they believe. They thought your forgiveness was permanent. They thought your loyalty was unshakable. They thought your silence meant submission. But the truth is, your silence is their teacher now. It teaches them that patience has limits. It teaches them that kindness can walk away. It teaches them that when you take away your voice, you take away their excuse to ignore their own. That's why silence is not just absence, it's confrontation, the most brutal kind, because it doesn't yell, it doesn't defend, it just exists, and existence is undeniable. Seneca once wrote, "Fire tests gold, adversity tests brave men." And my friends, your silence is that fire. It tests them in ways your words never could. It strips away the show. It leaves only what's real. And in that reality, they are forced to see that what they lost wasn't just a person. It was the one soul who gave them grace when they didn't deserve it, patience when they wasted it, and love when they mistook it for weakness. Do you know what silence also reveals? Their dependency. Because they didn't love you for you, they loved what you did for them. They loved the reflection of themselves they saw in your loyalty. But when you walked away, when you closed the door without slamming it, when you stopped explaining, you exposed their emptiness. And emptiness without distraction, that's torture. So if you're sitting there wondering tonight, will they ever feel my silence? Let me answer you straight. Yes, they will. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow. But silence doesn't expire. It lingers. It grows. It builds in weight every time they reach for a distraction that doesn't work. Every time they try to replace what they broke and find the replacement hollow. Silence is not a quick slap. It's a slow burn, and slow burns leave scars. So here's what I want you to affirm in yourself right now. Write it in the comments. Show it to yourself. Show it to the world around you. I am the mirror. Say it. Because that's what you've become in your silence. You are not begging to be seen. You are reflecting their truth back to them, whether they want it or not. And that, my friends, is power. Stay with me, because we're only getting started. We've seen how silence reflects back the truth they fear. But next, we're going to peel back another layer. The storm your absence created, the chaos they now sit in because you're no longer there to calm it. And that storm, that's where regret begins to burn. Number 3, your absence created their storm. When the soul is without a pilot, the winds of fortune drive it onto the rocks. Seneca. My friends, think about that for a moment. A soul without a pilot. That's what they became when you walked away in silence, because as long as you were there, as long as your presence lit up their chaos, they never had to steer their own ship. You were the compass, the anchor, the calming shore, and the day you stopped, the storm began. Not around you, around them. Picture this. Imagine a house built on sand. For a while it looks stable. They decorate the walls, put up pictures, invite people in. But every gust of wind, every shake of the ground reminds them that their foundation is weak. And then one day, the one person who held up the beams, the one who quietly braced the walls, steps away. What happens? The roof collapses, the walls crack, the illusion crumbles. That's your absence, folks. It isn't nothing, it's everything. It's the removal of the one force holding their fragile world together. You see, they thought they were the storm, and you were the fragile one. They thought you needed them to survive the emotional hurricanes they unleashed. But what they didn't see is that you weren't surviving their storm. You were calming it. You were the eye in the chaos. And when you left, the eye went with you. All that's left behind is the destruction they created, and now they're forced to sit in it without your shelter. And here's where the questions start clawing at you. What if they're fine without me? What if my absence doesn't even matter? What if I was never as important as I thought? Let me break that lie for you right now. Your absence matters more than your presence ever did, because presence can be taken for granted. But absence cannot be ignored. It's the ache that lingers in the chest when the room is too quiet. It's the empty seat at the table that no one can fill. It's the voice that used to soothe the storm and is now missing when the chaos screams the loudest. Marcus Aurelius said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Your absence forced them to confront outside events without the cushion of your mind, your patience, your guidance. And they hate it, because deep down, they know they didn't just lose you. They lost the stability they borrowed from you. Think of it like this. Imagine someone who has lived their entire life leaning on a crutch. That crutch isn't perfect. Sometimes it creaks, sometimes it wobbles, but it holds them up. Then one day, the crutch is gone. Suddenly, every step feels impossible. That's what your absence did. It revealed how dependent they were on your presence, even as they pretended to be strong, independent, untouchable. They leaned on you for everything, their validation, their ego, their sense of being wanted, and now without you, every step they take is shaky. They don't show it. They cover it with laughter, with distractions, with noise, but deep down, they know. And here's the irony, my friends. They once told themselves you were the weak one, too emotional, too forgiving, too patient. But when you walked away, the roles flipped, because the real storm wasn't you. The real storm was inside them, and now they have no shelter. They sit in the thunder of their own choices. They feel the rain of their own regrets. They taste the cold wind of their own emptiness. And you're not even in the storm anymore. You've found the shore. You've built a shelter of silence, of peace, of discipline. And from there, you watch, not in revenge, but in clarity, as they struggle in the chaos they thought they could escape. Let's be honest. Absence terrifies the selfish. Because selfish people depend on presence. They depend on you being there to absorb their tantrums, to catch their excuses, to patch up the holes in their soul. When you leave, they can't escape themselves anymore. Every room is too loud with silence. Every night is too long without your reassurance. Every conversation feels shallow compared to what they once had. And in that emptiness, the storm grows. Here's a lie you need to stop believing, that your absence makes you invisible. No, my friends, your absence makes you unforgettable. They can fill the room with people, but the weight of you not being there is heavier than all those bodies combined. They can scroll endlessly, but the silence between notifications screams louder than any text you could have sent. They can pretend to move on, but every shallow smile cracks under the pressure of the storm your absence left behind. Seneca also said, "It is the power of the mind to be unconquerable," but their mind is not unconquerable. Why? Because they never trained it. They never built discipline, never faced themselves, never learned to sit in silence. They depended on you to silence the noise, and when you stopped, their mind turned against them. That's why their storm doesn't stop, because storms don't calm themselves. They need stillness, and you were the stillness. Now, don't get me wrong, choosing absence was not easy for you. It meant walking away from the comfort of being needed, even if that need was toxic. It meant enduring the fear that maybe they wouldn't notice, maybe they wouldn't care. But the truth is this: absence always says more than presence ever could, because presence can be ignored, but absence forces reflection. It forces them to ask the questions they ran from. Why did they stop giving? Why did they stop answering? Why am I alone in this storm? And the hardest part for them, they know the answer. They know it wasn't because you stopped caring too soon. It was because they kept draining too long. It wasn't because your love was flawed. It was because their heart wasn't ready. And now that realization is their storm, not yours. So, my friends, here's what I want you to write in the comments right now. Write these 3 words, "I am peace," because that's the truth of your absence. You didn't leave to create chaos. You left to protect peace. And your peace is louder than their storm. Let the world see it. Show yourself, show them, show everyone around you that you're not the storm. You're the calm they lost. And stay with me, because what comes next is even more powerful. We've seen how your absence created their storm, but now we're going to talk about the moment they realize something far worse, that no storm, no distraction, no replacement can fill the space you once held. That's when regret doesn't just whisper, it roars. And my friends, that's where we're headed next. Number 4, when they realize they can't replace you. You don't know the value of water until the well runs dry. My friends, that proverb has echoed through generations because it captures the truth that people rarely see what they had until it's gone. And that's exactly what happens when your silence becomes permanent, when your absence becomes undeniable. At first, they try to convince themselves they can replace you. They run to new faces, new voices, new bodies. They believe that if they can just fill the empty space with noise, they won't feel the loss. But here's where the illusion shatters, because what you gave them cannot be replaced. It wasn't just attention, it wasn't just company, it was depth. And depth, once experienced, makes everything else feel shallow. Imagine drinking from a fresh mountain spring, cold, clean, life-giving. For years, that was you. Then imagine being handed a cup of salt water instead. It might look like water. It might trick the eyes. But the taste, it dries the tongue, burns the throat, leaves you thirstier than before. That's what their replacements feel like. On the surface, it seems the same. Companionship, conversation, intimacy, but beneath it, there's no depth, no grounding, no truth. And every sip reminds them of the spring they abandoned. That's the storm of regret. They thought they could replace you because they misunderstood what made you valuable. They thought it was the way you showed up, the way you gave, the way you forgave. They didn't realize it was who you were. Your patience wasn't a trick. Your loyalty wasn't a strategy. Your love wasn't a performance. It was real, and real cannot be duplicated. Marcus Aurelius said, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." Your presence was right. Your love was true. And now, everything they try to substitute it with feels counterfeit. And do you know what's worse than having nothing at all? having something fake after you've tasted what's real. Now here's the fear that creeps into your heart. What if they find someone better than me? What if they move on and forget me entirely? Let's break that lie. They can find someone louder, someone flashier, someone who entertains their ego better, but they will never find someone who reflects their soul the way you did. Because what you offered wasn't surface level. It was sanctuary, and sanctuaries aren't easy to build. They take time, presence, forgiveness, compassion. They take depth, and depth doesn't grow in shallow waters. Think of it like this. Imagine someone who spends their life in noisy clubs, surrounded by flashing lights, loud music, temporary highs. Then one day they stumble into a quiet cathedral. The stillness, the echo, the sacredness, it shakes them. It feels rare. It feels holy. That's what you were to them. And when they leave that cathedral, they can try to drown themselves in noise again. But somewhere inside, they'll always feel the absence of that sacred space. That's you. That's what cannot be replaced. Seneca once wrote, "A gem cannot be polished without friction, nor a man perfected without trials." You were the gem. Your loyalty, your patience, your love, that was the polish. You endured the friction of their chaos and still shone. And when they lost you, they didn't just lose a person. They lost the mirror that made them look better than they were, the anchor that made them feel steadier than they deserved. And no matter who they find next, that truth will haunt them. Here's the irony. They once believed you were replaceable. They thought patience like yours was common, that love like yours could be found on any corner. But life has a way of proving otherwise. The more they search, the more they realize. Not everyone forgives like you. Not everyone listens like you. Not everyone stays when things get messy. Most people leave at the first storm. Most people take without giving. Most people don't know how to love without conditions. And every time they're reminded of that, regret deepens. And let's be honest, my friends, it's not just that they can't replace you. It's that they never expected to need to. They thought you would always be there, always bending, always forgiving. They thought your patience was endless. So when you went silent, when you walked away without announcement, it stunned them. They didn't prepare for this version of you, the one who values peace over proving, dignity over drama, silence over noise. And in that shock, the realization hits, I lost the one I can't replace. Now here's the truth they'll never admit out loud. They'll tell others you were too much, too sensitive, too demanding. They'll spin stories to protect their pride. But in the quiet moments, the late nights, the empty mornings, the shallow conversations, they'll remember. They'll remember the depth of your presence. They'll remember the way your silence felt safe. They'll remember how you saw them when they couldn't even see themselves. And the truth will claw at them. I broke what I can never rebuild. And that's where regret burns the fiercest, not in the public moments, but in the private ones. When the phone doesn't ring, when the laughter fades, when they look around the room and realize no one knows them the way you did. That's when your irreplaceability haunts them. Epictetus taught, freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control. And here's the freedom you must embrace, my friends. You don't need to prove you're irreplaceable. You don't need to wait for them to admit it. Their regret is not your trophy. Your peace is. And when you walk in that truth, when you no longer crave their recognition, you rise above the storm of their loss. So write this in the comments right now. I am rare. Show it to yourself. Show it to the world. Because that's the truth. Your patience, your loyalty, your silence. They're not common. They're not average. They're rare. And rare things don't need to chase validation. Rare things are noticed the moment they're gone. Stay with me, because what comes next will strike even deeper. We've uncovered how they can't replace you, how every substitute falls short. But next, we'll dive into the fire of their ego, the way it burns when they see you rising higher, stronger, untouchable, while they sit in the ashes of what they lost. That, my friends, is the part they can't forgive, and that's where we're heading. Number 5. Their ego burns, but your soul rises. The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury. Marcus Aurelius spoke these words, and my friends, nothing describes this moment better. Because when you walked away in silence, when you refused to fight, when you stopped pouring your strength into someone who only came to drain it, something inside of you began to rise. And that rising, that quiet transformation, is exactly what sets their ego on fire. You see, they expected collapse. They expected you to crumble without them, to crawl back, begging for closure, for crumbs, for recognition. They thought their absence would be your downfall, but here's the paradox. They were your downfall while they were present. The moment you stepped away, the moment you chose silence, the chains they wrapped around your worth shattered, and in that freedom you began to rise. Not in anger, not in noise, but in peace. And that peace, my friends, is what their ego cannot handle. Let me paint you a picture. Imagine a firework. It explodes, loud, bright. Everyone claps for a few seconds. That's their ego. Flashy, temporary, desperate for applause. Now imagine the sunrise. It's not loud. It doesn't ask for attention, but it transforms the entire world with its presence. That's your soul rising. They expected you to vanish in darkness. Instead, you became the dawn they can't escape. And nothing burns their pride more than realizing your glow was never dependent on them. Here's the question that might have haunted you. What if they don't care that I'm rising? What if they don't notice? Let's break that lie right now. They notice. They always notice. Because ego feeds on comparison. And no matter how loudly they laugh, no matter how quickly they jump into new arms, no matter how many distractions they chase, your peace is a mirror they cannot look away from. It reflects their loss. It exposes their failure. It shows them that while they stayed the same, you became more. Seneca once said, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." And isn't that the truth of their ego? They wasted time trying to control, manipulate, and belittle you. They wasted their chance to rise with you, and now, every moment they see you stronger, calmer, more aligned, it burns, because it proves their time with you wasn't wasted because you weren't enough. It was wasted because they weren't ready. Let's talk about why this burns them so deeply. Their ego was built on a lie, the lie that they were the sun, and you were just orbiting around them, that without their light you would wither. But now the roles are reversed. Your soul has become the sun, and they are left in the shadow of their own pride. They can pretend not to see it, but shadows always remind you that the light is shining elsewhere. Think of a garden. While you were with them, you poured water into their soil. You pulled weeds. You protected the seeds. But they gave nothing back. They thought they were the gardener, but really, they were just standing in a garden you kept alive. And when you left, the soil dried, the weeds returned, the flowers wilted. Meanwhile, you took your hands, your patience, your love, and you started planting in your own field. And now, your garden is flourishing. That contrast, that's what eats away at their ego. Because nothing hurts more than watching what you once neglected thrive in someone else's care, especially when that someone else is the very person you thought you could break. Now here's the hard truth. They will never admit this. Their pride is too thick, their ego too fragile. Out loud they will say you've changed, you're cold, you've forgotten them. They'll paint you as selfish, distant, even cruel. But deep inside, they know. They know the peace you carry now is the peace they tried to destroy. They know the glow on your face is the glow they tried to dim. And they know the strength in your silence is the strength they never thought you'd find. That awareness, hidden as it may be, is what burns. But let me flip the script for you. Their ego burning is not your concern. That's not where your focus belongs. Your focus belongs on the rising, because rising takes courage. Rising takes discipline. Rising means saying no to old patterns, old cycles, old wounds. Rising means facing yourself and refusing to let bitterness become your identity. And that, my friends, is harder than revenge. Revenge is easy. Anyone can lash out. Anyone can destroy. But to rise, to grow, to shine without shouting, that is the rarest power of all. Epictetus said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." And that's what you've become in this silence. You've mastered yourself. You no longer hand over your peace like currency. You no longer beg for validation that was never theirs to give. You no longer live in reaction to their chaos. And that freedom is priceless. It's the crown that sits on your head quietly, invisibly, yet undeniably. But let's be honest, it wasn't easy to get here. There were nights you doubted yourself, nights you wondered if silence was really strength or just fear in disguise. Days when you replayed conversations, tempted to break the silence just to prove you were right. And yet you stayed disciplined, and that discipline became your wings. Every day you chose peace over provocation, you rose higher. And every inch higher you climbed, the smaller they became in your view. Think of an eagle. It doesn't waste time fighting with crows. It doesn't swoop down into the mud to prove itself. It rises higher until the air becomes too thin for the crow to follow. That's you. Your silence was the flight. Your rising is the altitude. And now they can't reach you, not because you're hiding, but because you've outgrown their chaos. Now here's the affirmation I want you to claim today. Write it in the comments. Show yourself. Show the world. Show the ones who doubted you. I rise higher. Because that's exactly what you've done. And every time you speak it, every time you declare it, you remind yourself that their ego is not your prison anymore. Your peace is your power. Your growth is your justice. Your rising is your revenge. And stay with me, because we're not finished yet. We've seen how their ego burns when your soul rises. But next, we're going deeper. We're going to talk about regret itself. The way it creeps in late, uninvited, relentless. The way it always shows up too late when you're already gone. That's the weight they will carry, and that's where we're headed next. Number 6. Regret always arrives too late. We suffer more often in imagination than in reality. Seneca said this nearly 2,000 years ago, and my friends, if there is one truth about regret, it is this. Regret doesn't strike at the moment they hurt you. No, it waits. It hides, it lingers in the shadows, and then it creeps in long after you've walked away, long after your silence has settled into permanence. Regret is a late visitor. It doesn't knock when you're still standing at the door, asking to be seen. It arrives only when the door is locked, the lights are off, and you're no longer waiting inside. That's when it breaks them. That's when the weight of what they lost becomes unbearable. Think about a seed. When it's planted, you don't see it grow right away. Days, weeks pass before it even breaks through the soil. Regret works the same way. At first, they laugh. They pretend, they flaunt distractions. They might even convince themselves they're better off without you. But inside, beneath the surface, the seed of regret has already been planted. And slowly, silently, it grows. Until one day, without warning, it cracks through their calm and begins to overtake them. The problem with regret is timing. It always arrives too late. When you were present, when you were giving, when you were patient, they couldn't see your worth. They couldn't value what felt permanent. They thought your loyalty was endless, your forgiveness automatic. They thought you'd always be there to answer the phone, to calm the storm, to forgive the hurt. But when you stopped, when your silence became the answer they never expected, that's when regret finally woke up. And by then, you were already gone. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The loss of what is no loss to a man is no loss at all." But here's the truth. Losing you was a loss they cannot admit to others, but one they feel every day in their bones. They try to replace you, but every new connection feels hollow. They try to distract themselves, but the noise fades when they're alone. They try to deny it, but denial only fuels regret. And regret, my friends, is patient. It waits until they're vulnerable, until they're alone, until the mask slips. And then it whispers, "You lost something you'll never find again." Let's break the lies regret feeds on. They'll tell themselves you were too much, too demanding, too sensitive. They'll replay the story in their favor, painting you as the problem. But deep down, in the quiet, they know. They know you were the one who stayed longer than you should have, gave more than you received, forgave more than was reasonable. And the hardest truth of all, they know they didn't lose you because you stopped loving them. They lost you because they kept pushing, testing, and draining until there was nothing left to take. That knowledge, that awareness, is the flame of regret. And flames only grow stronger when fueled by silence. Picture this. Imagine someone tossing away a diamond, thinking it's just glass. They walk away, laughing, careless. But years later, they realize they can't find anything like it again. They search markets, dig through stones, but nothing shines the same. And slowly, the laughter fades. It's replaced by a gnawing ache, a realization, I had something rare, and I destroyed it. That's regret. It's not loud, it's not dramatic. It's the slow, steady ache of loss that can't be undone. You might wonder, do they really feel it, or am I just hoping they do? Here's the Stoic truth. Whether they admit it or not, whether they show it or not, they feel it. Because no one walks away from something rare untouched. Maybe they won't say it. Maybe their pride won't let them. But silence has a way of forcing reflection, and regret is born in reflection, when the noise ends, when the distractions fail, when they sit in the quiet and realize that the only person who truly saw them, truly understood them, truly gave without keeping score, is gone. That's when regret digs its claws in. Seneca also said, "Life is long if you know how to use it." And isn't that where regret burns them the most? They wasted time. They wasted chances. They wasted you. And now, as they sit in the aftermath, they realize life is long, but not long enough to undo what they broke. Because no matter how many chances they get with others, it will never feel like the one they lost with you. That's the kind of regret that doesn't fade. It lingers like a scar, invisible to the world, but visible to them every time they close their eyes. But here's the part I want you to hold on to. Regret isn't your burden. It's not yours to carry, not yours to prove, not yours to wait for. Regret belongs to them, and while they sit in it, you rise above it. Because your silence wasn't just absence, it was liberation. It was you finally choosing to stop betraying yourself for the sake of someone who never saw your worth. And that choice, my friends, is your freedom. Think of a phoenix. It doesn't rise from peace. It rises from fire, from ashes, from destruction. You walked through the fire of heartbreak. You sat in the ashes of loss. But instead of letting it bury you, you rose, stronger, brighter, unshakable. And as you rise, their ego burns, their pride crumbles, their regret deepens. Not because you set out to destroy them, but because you set out to heal yourself. And healing yourself was the one thing they never thought you'd do. So don't waste another second wondering if they regret it. They do. But it's not the regret you imagine. It's not the regret that brings them running back, begging for forgiveness. No, it's the kind of regret that haunts quietly, silently, relentlessly. The kind of regret that arrives too late to fix anything. The kind of regret that leaves them watching you rise from afar, knowing they'll never have access to that light again. And here's the affirmation I want you to write in the comments right now. 3 words: I move forward. Write it, declare it, show it to yourself and the world. Because regret may trap them in the past, but you are not bound there anymore. You are moving forward, into clarity, into peace, into a future that no longer depends on their recognition. Stay with me, because this journey isn't over yet. We've uncovered how regret always arrives too late, how silence plants the seed that grows into their burden. But next, we're going even deeper. We'll talk about the Stoic truth, that you never needed revenge, that your rising is the only justice you'll ever need. And my friends, that lesson will change everything. Number 7, the Stoic truth: revenge is never needed. The best revenge is not to be like your enemy. Marcus Aurelius left us that jewel of wisdom, and my friends, it strikes right at the core of what we're talking about. Because when you've been betrayed, disrespected, or discarded, there's always that pull, that temptation. How do I make them feel what I felt? How do I show them what they've lost? It's human, it's natural. But the Stoics knew a secret that most people miss. Revenge doesn't heal. Revenge keeps you chained to the very thing you're trying to escape. And if you're still tied to their chaos, are you really free? Think of it like this. Imagine you're walking down the street carrying a bucket of poison. Every step, you clutch it tighter, waiting for the right moment to throw it at the one who hurt you. But here's the truth. The longer you carry it, the more it leaks. It seeps into your skin, your lungs, your heart. And by the time you finally pour it out, you've poisoned yourself far more than them. That's what revenge does. It pretends to be power. But really, it's prison. Now, let me be honest with you. I know what some of you are thinking. But why should they get away with it? Why should they just walk free while I sit here bleeding? That's the lie revenge whispers, that hurting them will heal you. But here's the reality. Life has a way of evening the scales without you lifting a finger. Call it karma, call it consequence, call it the law of nature, whatever name you give it. Understand this. People cannot escape the weight of their own actions. And when you stop carrying their chaos, when you stop playing judge and executioner, life itself steps in. Seneca wrote, "He who is injured ought not to return the injury, for on no account can it be right to do wrong." That's not weakness, my friends, that's wisdom, because revenge feeds the cycle. It keeps the storm spinning. Silence, on the other hand, ends it. When you walk away in peace, when you choose to rise instead of retaliate, you break the chain, and that's what terrifies them. Not that you screamed, not that you fought, but that you didn't need to, that your calm became the justice they can't outrun. Picture this. Imagine a stage where someone is throwing insults, lies, manipulation. They're ready for battle, they're armed with chaos. But then you do something unexpected. You walk off stage, the lights go out, the audience leaves. Suddenly, their performance has no audience. And what is a performance without an audience? Nothing. That's the power of refusing revenge. You starve their ego of the one thing it craves, attention. But I'll tell you why it feels so hard. It feels hard because silence doesn't give you the rush. Revenge is instant gratification. It feels good for a second to clap back, to prove your point, to expose them. But that feeling fades, and then you're left empty. Silence, however, is slower. It feels heavy at first, like discipline always does. But in the long run, silence builds strength. It rebuilds your peace. It creates a future where you're no longer chained to their memory. And here's the irony. They expect revenge. They expect drama. They expect you to try to tear them down. That's the script they know. But when you don't give it to them, when you choose quiet, when you choose distance, they're left unsettled. They don't know how to fight silence, and that confusion becomes the seed of their regret. Let's talk about truth. Revenge says, I want to hurt you. But healing says, I no longer need you. Which one is stronger? Which one is more powerful? Which one makes them lose sleep at night? It's not the person shouting insults across the battlefield. It's the one who puts the sword down and walks away. Because walking away says everything revenge never could. I don't need you to feel pain for me to feel peace. I don't need your recognition to know my worth. I don't need your apology to close my chapter. Epictetus reminded us, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. Your silence, your refusal to chase revenge, is your greatest reaction, because it shifts the story. It takes the pen out of their hands and puts it back in yours. You're no longer a character in their drama. You're the author of your own piece. And that, my friends, is the one ending they can't rewrite. Here's another image for you. Think of a storm tearing through a forest. Trees fall, branches snap, rivers overflow. But in the aftermath, there's one tree that still stands, strong, unmoved, unbroken. That tree doesn't scream at the storm. It doesn't try to throw lightning back at the sky. It just stands, tall, silent, resilient. And that silent resilience says more than any act of revenge ever could. That's you. That's the soul that rises without needing to destroy. Now let's break another lie. Some of you might feel that not seeking revenge makes you look weak, that people will think you let them get away with it. But weakness is not walking away. Weakness is needing them to feel pain just to feel whole again. True strength is standing in peace, knowing life itself will handle the rest, because revenge is about them. But peace is about you. And here's where their ego burns. Because every step you take in silence, every smile you wear without bitterness, every moment you live without needing them, it screams a truth they cannot escape. You didn't destroy me. You freed me. That's the echo of your peace. That's the justice of your silence. That's the revenge you never had to plan because it happened the moment you chose yourself. Marcus Aurelius also said, waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be one. You don't need to argue about who was right, who was wrong, who was the villain. You just need to be, to live, to rise, to let your existence be the answer. That's the Stoic way. And that's why revenge is never needed, because the life you build in their absence is the only answer that matters. So let me leave you with this. Write it in the comments. Declare it for yourself, for the world, for the ones who tried to break you. I choose peace. 3 words that end the cycle. 3 words that reclaim your strength. 3 words that prove you no longer need revenge because you've found something greater. And stay with me, because the journey doesn't end here. We've seen how revenge is unnecessary, how peace is the only justice you'll ever need. But next, we're going to step into the highest level of power. What happens when silence doesn't just free you, but makes you untouchable? And my friends, that's where your story transforms completely. Number 8. You became untouchable in silence. No man is free who is not master of himself. Epictetus spoke these words centuries ago, and my friends, they ring louder today than ever before, because that's exactly what you became in the end, untouchable. Not because you built walls of bitterness, not because you hardened yourself into someone unrecognizable, but because through silence, through discipline, through choosing peace over revenge, you mastered yourself. And when you master yourself, you become someone they cannot touch, no matter how hard they try. At first, they thought silence would break you. They mistook your quiet for weakness. They thought you'd come running back, desperate for recognition, begging to be seen. They mistook your pause for paralysis. But silence wasn't paralysis. It was preparation. It was the deep breath before the rise. It was the moment you turned inward, not outward. And in that turning, you reclaimed something they could never give you, your power. Picture this with me. Imagine a mountain. Storms crash against it, lightning strikes, winds howl, but the mountain stands, unmoved, unshaken. That's you now. You're no longer caught in the turbulence of their drama. You're not tossed around by their moods, their words, their manipulation. You stand, silent, steady, untouchable, and while they scream against the storm of their own making, you rise above it. Not because you ignored the pain, but because you learned how to transform it. They tried to convince themselves they could still reach you. Maybe with guilt, maybe with false apologies, maybe with the crumbs of affection they used to lure you back. But the silence you built became a fortress. Not a fortress of anger, but of clarity. And clarity is stronger than any manipulation. Clarity is the wall they cannot climb. Because once you see someone for who they truly are, once the fog lifts, you can't unsee it. And that sight is what made you untouchable. Marcus Aurelius said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." That's the core of it. You stopped trying to control them. You stopped waiting for them to change. You stopped begging the storm to calm. Instead, you took control of your own mind, your own peace, your own choices. And that, my friends, is true freedom. Because when your peace is no longer dependent on someone else's behavior, no one can take it from you. And here's what really stings for them. Your silence wasn't empty. It wasn't nothing. It was transformation. While they sat still, trapped in the same patterns, you grew, you healed, you rose. Your silence became the soil where new strength took root, and every smile you wear now, every boundary you hold, every step you take forward, it's proof. Proof that you were never broken, proof that you never needed them to complete you, proof that you could rise alone. And that proof, that quiet, undeniable reality, is what makes you untouchable. Think of it like an eagle. The higher it flies, the thinner the air becomes. The predators who once circled it below can't survive in that altitude. That's you. Your silence lifted you higher into an atmosphere they can't breathe in, not because you ran, not because you hid, but because you grew. And growth always elevates you out of the reach of those who choose to stay small. Now, let's break the lies they told themselves. They thought your silence meant you didn't care. They thought your distance meant you were bitter. They thought your boundaries meant you were cruel. But the truth is simpler and far more powerful. Your silence meant you finally cared about yourself. Your distance meant you finally chose peace. Your boundaries meant you finally saw your worth. And that's what makes you untouchable. Because people can attack weakness. They can exploit doubt. They can manipulate fear. But what can they do with clarity? What can they do with peace? Nothing. They're powerless against it. Seneca once wrote, "It is not that we have a short life to live, but that we waste a lot of it." And you, my friends, have stopped wasting time. You've stopped wasting it on explaining yourself to people who were never listening. You've stopped wasting it on fixing people who didn't want to be fixed. You've stopped wasting it on proving your value to people who were blind to it. And in that choice, you've made the most stoic move of all. You've reclaimed time. And time, once reclaimed, makes you unstoppable. But let's be honest, it wasn't easy. Becoming untouchable meant sitting in the loneliness of silence. It meant fighting the urge to break it just to feel heard. It meant trusting that peace would be worth more than revenge. It meant watching them pretend, watching them replace, watching them perform, and choosing not to join the circus. That takes strength. That takes discipline. That takes courage. And you did it. That's why you're untouchable now. So, if you're wondering, do they know? Do they feel it? The answer is yes. They know. They feel it. Every time they reach out and there's no answer. Every time they try to recreate what they had and it falls flat. Every time they hear your name and feel the sting in their chest. They know you've risen beyond them. They know you're untouchable, and that burns. Not because you punished them, but because you didn't need to. Your rising was enough. And here's the final truth. You don't need to prove you're untouchable. You don't need to flaunt it, post it, or scream it. Your life proves it. Your peace proves it. Your silence proves it. Because nothing unsettles those who tried to break you more than seeing you live free, unbothered, and whole. That is the justice. That is the victory. That is the revenge you never needed to take. So, my friends, here's what I want you to declare right now. Type it in the comments. Let it be your affirmation, your shield, your crown. I am untouchable. Say it not to them, but to yourself, because the moment you believe it, the world will reflect it. And if this message spoke to you, if it reminded you of your strength, if it helped you see the power of your silence, then press the like button, share this with someone who needs it, and subscribe to this channel. Not just for the sake of numbers, but so you never forget that this journey we're on together is one of peace, of power, of clarity. Stay with me, my friends, because this untouchable version of you is only the beginning.